then I can read the accessibility statements. We're first with our notice of non-discrimination. You're invited to participate in our transportation planning process, regardless of your race, color, national origin, including limited English proficiency, religion, creed, gender, ancestry, ethnicity, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, veteran status, or background. You can read the full notice on the Boston MPO website. Accessibility statement. This meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Zoom products are compliant with exceptions with the following standards: Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 Level AA standards and revised Section 508 standards. If you require any additional accommodations in order to participate fully in this meeting, or if you have any technical difficulties, please contact Ethan Lapointe, MPO staff at elapointe@ctps.org, or you can call him at 857-702-3703 or via the chat box. Guidelines for today. All participants will join the meeting with muted microphones. Please rename yourself to include your first name, last name, and affiliation. After the roll call, board members may mute and unmute themselves. Always remain muted unless actively speaking. To participate in the discussion, please select the raised hand function. You can find this by clicking either on the participants button at the bottom of the screen, and a window will pop up with a raised hand button at the bottom, or the reactions button in the toolbar, and the chair will call on participants. And if you're on the phone, you can use the *9 feature to raise your hand. So let's start with introductions. David Hong.
Thank you. I'll call MassDOT seat 1.
Yep.
Good morning.
Oh, I'm sorry, Larry.
Sorry, go ahead, Derek.
Oh, okay. I think you'll be for John Bashar, which I think is our seat 2, but I am here for MassDOT seat 1, representing our Secretary and CEO, Monica Tibbetson. Thank you.
Thank you. MassDOT seat 2.
Good morning. I'm Lise Lyoto, Deputy Director of Project Management, representing John Bouchard from MassDOT Highway Division, Project Management Section.
Good morning and thank you. MassDOT Highway Division, please. Are you representing for MassDOT C2 for John Bouchard? Okay.
Yes.
Roger. And then if we don't see John Romano, I will pass to the MBTA.
I am here. Sorry.
Oh,
John
pardon me.
Romano, MassDOT Highway Division. Sorry about that, Dave.
Not a problem. Good morning, John. The MBTA.
Good morning. Sandy Johnson representing General Manager Phil Ang and the MBTA.
Morning. MAPC, please.
Yes, Eric Barassa, MAPC.
Great. Massport.
Hi, good morning. This is Sarah Lee representing Massport.
Good morning, Sarah. Do we have the MBTA Advisory Board?
Yeah, morning, Brian Kane. I guess I'm representing myself today.
Good morning. Advisory Council, please.
I'm Leonard Diggins, Advisory Council here. Thanks.
Thank you. City of Boston, BTD.
Yes, hello there. Patrick Hoey, City of Boston, BTD, representing my friend and colleague Jen Rowe today.
Good morning and welcome. City of Boston Planning Department, please.
I think Matt Moran is my colleague, I think, sitting in for Jim Fitzgerald.
Thank you. And is Matt Moran present today?
He may have had trouble with the link. Could be trying to log on now.
Got it. Aaron or Lauren, would you mind forwarding Matt Moran the link, please? And then I will move to at-large city of Everett.
Morning, Jay Monty, representing Mayor DiMaria and the City of Everett.
Good morning. Thank you. At-large city of Newton.
Jen Martin, representing Mayor Ruth Ann Fuller and the City of Newton.
Good morning. At-large town of Arlington. Next, at-large town of Brookline.
Good morning, Erin Chute, Town of Brookline, representing Select Board Chair Bernard Green.
Good morning. Intercore Committee, City of Somerville.
Good morning, Tom Bent, representing the city of Somerville, and Mayor Catriona Ballantyne and the Inner Core.
Good morning. Minuteman Advisory Group on Interlocal Coordination, Town of Acton.
Good morning, Kayla Sauer, alternate representing Fran Arsenal, Chair of the Acton Select Board for Magic.
Good morning. Metro West Regional Collaborative, City of Framingham, please.
Dennis Giambetti, representing Metro West, and Mayor Charles Suzuki.
Good morning. North Shore Task Force, City of Beverly.
Darlene Nguyen, representing Mayor Cahill and the City of Beverly for the North Shore Task Force.
Hello. North Suburban Planning Council, Town of Burlington.
Melissa, North Suburban Planning Council, thanks, Burlington. Did you get that? Okay.
Yes, is that Melissa Bourbon? Yeah. South Shore Coalition, Town of Hull. Thanks for confirming.
Hi, Chris Diorio, representing Hull Board Chair Erwin Nessa.
Good morning. Southwest Advisory Planning Committee, Town of Rentham.
Hi, Rachel Benson, here representing Chair Joe Botash for the Rentham Board of Selectmen.
Hello. Great. Three Rivers Interlocal Council, Town of Norwood.
Good morning, Tom O'Rourke from the town of Norwood, representing the Trick subregion.
Good morning. Do we have the Federal Highway Administration?
Good morning, Ken Miller, Federal Highway.
Good morning as well. And finally, the Federal Transit Administration, please. Is there anyone just returning back on the role that, is that Matt Moran?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Yeah, this is Matt Moran, City of Boston, representing Mayor Wu and the Planning Department.
Thank you. Did I miss anyone else? That calls the roll, and back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dave. There is no chair's report today, so I'm going to pass it to Tegan for the executive director's report.
Thank you, Eric. Just wait for the slide to catch up. All right, great. I just have a few updates today, and I just wanted to go over the agenda for today as well, as I often do. So first, next slide, please. We just have a quick staffing update. We have recently hired a new position, which is a website administrator, and this new position will be reporting to Gina Weaver, who is the manager of the Information Technology Group, and this position will be starting later in the month, this month. So that's our staffing update for today. Next slide, please. I also have a grant award update, and usually after these, we will pause for just if there's any comments or questions about it. Eric, that's been our process for the last several meetings. And so first, I'll just give a little summary and then pause to see if anybody wants to discuss or has any questions. So in April, we informed the board that we were going to apply for, and now we can share that the MPO was awarded the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness, or the MVP Action Plan grant. The grant award, which is totaling just over $1 million, represents a partnership with 4 municipalities in our region and 4 advocacy organizations as well. So the 4 municipalities are Chelsea, Everett, Framingham, and Revere. And the 4 advocacy organizations are Walk Massachusetts, Mass Bike, Bike to the Sea, and the Mystic River Watershed Association. And just to give you a sense of the purpose of the grant, the intent is to use high-resolution data sources to identify the heat risk of people who are walking and biking and what they're exposed to as they travel throughout the region. And once we have that, we'll work with our partners to plan, design, and implement a pilot geared towards providing mitigation measures for that heat risk and exposure. So an example of that could include cool corridors for walking and biking, using more urban greenery, reflective paint. Another example could be shaded shelters for example, public transit waiting areas. So I can pause there. Just if you click forward one more. If there are any questions, in addition, Ronak Basu, who's our manager of our multimodal planning and design group, can also be here to answer questions or hear comments if anybody has them about this grant.
Any questions? Brian Kane.
Thanks. Yeah, Tegan, just want to say great job on that. It's a huge issue, and clearly as our climate is changing, the need to accommodate and cool down folks is going to become more and more important. And this seems like a great synergy of the expertise of CTPS as well as the outreach abilities of those communities and the nonprofit, non-governmental folks. So this looks really good, and I just wanted to encourage you and everyone at CTPS to keep applying and keep up the great work. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate that.
Dan Jaffe, I see you have your hand raised. Do you have a question, or is that just by accident or on a different topic?
I need to talk when we have the public comments area.
Great. That'll be next on the agenda. So I'll call you at that point. Okay. Any other questions about this grant? Great. You can keep going, Tegan.
Next slide, please. So we have quite a few action items today, and so I just wanted to give a quick overview so people feel oriented going into the many items we have. So first, I'm thinking I'm going to run through about 4 or 5 of them. First of all, there will be an action item for the 3rd amendment to the Unified Planning Work Program, the current UPWP for this year. Srilekha Murthy will present on that. And the request will be to waive the public comment period to endorse the amendment. This is a sort of 3rd quarter final kind of adjustment to our budgets to ensure that we can spend down the available funding most efficiently as we approach the end of the federal fiscal year. The next action item listed here is for the current TIP. This is Amendment 11. This will be a vote to endorse after it has been out for public comment and that public comment period has concluded. Ethan LaPointe will present on this, and it was related to delays for an intersection project improvement that was based in Milton due to some environmental issues related to right-of-way. The next item on this list is TIP Amendment 13, which is also for the current federal fiscal year 24 to 28 TIP. This has a little more to it. Ethan LaPointe will present on that. The request for this amendment will be for you all to endorse, considering waiving the public comment period. The reason for that is because of the time sensitivity of some of the items in the amendment. So, for example, there are a few new projects being included in this amendment for the federal fiscal year 24 year as a result of MassDOT requesting and gaining access to spending additional funds through the annual August redistribution process. Ethan will give a very brief description of that, but what that entailed was the ability to spend some additional funding to flex funds to FTA for 2 MBTA projects on the Fairmont line and for flood mitigation. So those tend to be time sensitive to get them going in this federal fiscal year, as well as to achieve the flex process. And then there are some other project changes in there as well that are time sensitive. The amendment also delays one project from this current federal fiscal year to a future one, and then works to repurpose those funds within the current federal fiscal year to ensure they can be spent within the year. So again, we'll be asking to consider waiving the public comment period to try to meet the deadlines that are there for those kind of time sensitive adjustments. Next slide, please. Excuse me. So the last action item on this list, other than of course approving minutes, if that's on the list, is that we will have the MOU in front of you again. We presented on this last meeting, and this time we will ask if you have had time to consider it and ask any further questions. You are ready to release the MOU for a 21-day public comment period, after which we will ask if you will be willing to endorse the new memorandum of understanding. But this today is the release for public comment. And then we will have 2 presentations. One will be one of our corridor studies. Seth Asante will present work that we do year over year, where we work with the municipality to take a look and make recommendations for improvements on a priority corridor within that municipality. So this study typically talks about existing conditions, assessing safety and operational problems, and then discusses both short-term and long-term potential improvements. And then our last presentation will be about a new performance dashboard, and Sam Taylor will demonstrate the capabilities of that performance dashboard. Next slide, please. All right, so next meetings and announcements. We look likely to be able to cancel the next scheduled MPO meeting, which would be on September 5th. So keep your ears open though, or your eyes open for an email confirming that. But likely we will reach out and confirm that that meeting can be canceled unless something else comes up. If that is the case, then the next meeting will be on September 19th at 10 a.m. And also, I wanted to make sure everybody hopefully saw in their inboxes, there is a survey if for board members that should have been sent out to you, may have been yesterday or the day before, and it is asking for your input on topics related to the annual meeting that we will have. This will be our second one this coming November. So I just want to draw your attention to that. Please share with us your ideas. And that is it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Tegan, any questions on the agenda or next meetings? Okay, not seeing any. We will move to public comments. So if any members of the public have a comment on anything on the agenda, we can take it now. You can also hold it, and during the discussion after board members, I will call on people. So Dan Jaffe, I know you were interested in giving a comment. Do you want to go?
There you go.
There we go.
I was trying. Okay. First of all, the Everett Stadium is going to be happening. It may not happen this coming year. It may come next year, but it will happen. And frankly, I think it's important to do because the Everett area has two sizable brown sites, brownfields, which need to be rebuilt. And it's an industrial space that there isn't anything going else in there. It's already falling apart. So what we really need here is better transit within that quarter space because the stadium is going to be requiring maybe 30, maybe up to 40K of transits within a day, if not more. So the Silver Line that is being proposed presently is actually the bad decision. It is too small for the need. What's really needed is the Orange Line spur line into Everett, which we've been proposing for quite a few years. And even our stations in Charlestown are set up that way. And the reason why this is important is Charlestown is the keystone of transit within this corridor space. So if you destroy us, you destroy, if you destroy that transit corridor, you destroy us. And Rutherford Ave is too critical a pathway for us to cross or get into to disregard. So what we need here is to leave the original 2019 design as we've already agreed to stick with it. We're not flattening Rutherford. It's not a workable solution. You're destroying our community if you do so. And we need those pathways to get our transit across, especially when you have to add in that we are going to be going maybe 20, maybe even 25,000 more people per the planned Charlestown process that we've already just gone through. So we don't have room for more cars, either transit across Rutherford or into Rutherford or to be able to park within Charlestown. We need other options. We need what we've already proposed, which is what's called C-Link, which is a localized intra-community transit solution, which goes between our Orange Line stations as well as the Leechmere station presently, and maybe eventually to the East Cambridge station. But we cannot survive if we lose the corridor space to the regional traffic, especially with Everett. So I don't want to disregard the fact that the regional traffic needs to get into Boston. I agree, it needs to get through, but not at our expense. There has to be other solutions that are much more viable than what's being proposed. And we just can't, we'll suffer the consequences long term. We need to be out of cars and into bicycles and walkability. And presently, we don't have a lot of that. Our current bridges don't allow it. So please, we need a second corridor opening across the Gilmore space with bicyclists as well as a microtransit solution so that we can survive. Please, I implore you not to disregard our pleas. And if you really want to do us a big favor, maybe this fall, have a community sit down with our community to listen to us. We're at your beck and call to move this forward. We want better solutions for all of us, not one group or another. Please, thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Brad Rawson.
Thank you, Chair. Sound check. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity to provide public comment. This is just a quick comment, Chair, on proposed tip amendment 13. I'd like to call everyone's attention, as Tegan did in the Executive Director's report, to the new funding proposed for decarbonization of the Fairmount Regional Rail Service. This is really exciting news. The MPO board has been advocating for exactly this kind of investment for several tip cycles. So I'd like to congratulate and thank MassDOT and MBTA for this proposal, and I encourage the board to approve it. And let's all remember, Chair, that these electrification efforts are intended to be scaled across the region for all of our existing commuter rail lines. The funding source for this capital investment is listed as FHWA August redistribution, as we heard in the Executive Director's report. I do feel that this board has asked questions about this process over the years, and I think the MPO could continue to benefit from a little clearer training and education about this critical funding source so that we can more effectively partner with MassDOT and MBTA in next year's tip cycle. Things like our tipper committee and our November annual board meeting could be great opportunities for public discussion of this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Let's see, Jared Johnson.
Yes, hello, thanks. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. My name is Jared Johnson. I'm the Executive Director of Transit Matters, and really just want to echo Brad's comments that I'm commenting in strong support of the amendment to move funds to support the Fairmount Line decarbonization project. And I also want to see how we can better utilize this August redistribution process. You know, my understanding is that there's quite a bit of money left on the table from other states and other regions, and with all of the needs of the MBTA, I would really love for the MPO to explore how we can get more of those funds and take care of the long list of MBTA, both state of good repair and modernization and expansion needs. So thank you.
Thank you, Jared. And yeah, we will have that discussion when we get to that agenda item. Brendan Callahan. Brendan, can you unmute? Okay, I am going to skip Brendan and go to Brian Kane.
Thank you, Eric. I just wanted to take the opportunity, since you're in the chair, to congratulate you and your staff at MAPC on some great white papers that came out yesterday, some briefing papers that really help add to the discussion around revenues that we all need to be having. And I just think that those three briefing papers, I would encourage everyone to look at it. It's a great addition to the conversation and put some concrete proposals on the table to hopefully help get us out of the fiscal cliff or fiscal calamity that is coming all too soon. So I just wanted to thank you for doing that, Eric. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Brian. And when I get a minute, I will I can post those in the chat for people to connect to. Thank you. Appreciate that. Let's see. I think Brendan went away. Any other public comments? Okay, not seeing any. Let's go to committee chairs reports. Any committee chairs? Derek Cravat.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to give a quick update on behalf of the Unified Planning Work Program Committee. We met last week, August 8th, to discuss the Amendment 3 that is on this agenda later today. As Tegan mentioned in her Executive Director's report, this will be voted on for approval and to waive the public comment period for it. The amendment mostly consists of adjustments to the UPWP for the fourth quarter, but there is a net zero impact on the actual UPWP, meaning that it just involves shifting funds between tasks to make adjustments as we approach the end of the fiscal year. It also involves the grant award, the MADI grant that Tegan described earlier, as well as some changes to utilizing deobligated planning funds or funds that were allocated previously but not spent. And there was a small change since the UPWP committee meeting met last week regarding some technicalities regarding staff costs that are a slight change to the amendment, but Srileka will cover that in more detail. But I had been briefed and we coordinated on that between CTPS and MassDOT, and we were all good with the changes. So just wanted to let folks know the UPWP committee did vote to approve that amendment at the meeting last week. For folks' context as it comes up later in the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Any other committee chairs? Okay, not seeing any. We will go to the Regional Transportation Advisory Council. Len Diggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so the Advisory Council has not had a meeting since our last meeting. Our next meeting will be on September 11th. We haven't worked out the agenda completely yet, but it's always exciting. So mark it on your calendars, but it's also recorded, so you can always watch it on YouTube. We did not have a formal field trip to the Connolly terminal at Massport, but Massport through Sarah Lee was kind enough to arrange a tour at the request of myself and the executive director, and we brought along some members of the staff, as well as some members of the Right Oversight Committee and some Arlington residents to see the Connolly terminal. And this was my second time, and I was even more impressed than my first time. And I don't need to preach to you all about the importance of freight, but the job that they do at Massport is really impressive. And I know it may not seem sexy, freight in general, and maybe even a tour to the Connolly terminal, but if ever you have a chance to go, I suggest that you go, because you will not be disappointed. You'll learn a lot of big things and small things about how freight works in the region. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Len. Let's go to agenda item 7, which is an action item. Can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes of June 20th? Brian Kane.
So moved.
Tom Bent.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Dave, can you call the roll, please?
Yes, I will call on Derek Cravat.
Derek Cravat, yes.
Lyris Leotard.
Yes.
John Romano. Sandy Johnston.
Romano, yes.
Oh, pardon me. My fault. Sandy Johnston.
Sandy Johnston, yes.
Sarah Lee.
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Barassa.
Eric Barassa, yes.
Brian Kane.
Kane, yes.
Len Diggins.
Diggins, yes.
Patrick Hoey.
Patrick Hoey, yes.
Matt Moran.
Matt Moran, yes.
Jay Monty.
Jay Monty, yes.
Jen Martin.
Jen Martin, yes.
Aaron Shute.
Aaron Shute, yes.
Tom Bent.
Tom Benton, yes.
Kayla Sauer.
Kayla Sauer abstain.
Abstain. Thank you. Dennis Giambetti.
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Nguyen.
Darlene Nguyen, yes.
Melissa Tentopoulos. Chris Diorio.
Chris Diorio, yes.
Rachel Benson.
Abstain.
Thank you. Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Have I missed anyone? If not, that motion carries. And back to you, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you. Agenda 8, let's see, action item UPWP Amendment 3. Let me pass that to Srilekha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, all. My name is Srilekha Murthy, and I'm the manager of the Unified Planning Work Program with the Boston Region MPO. Today, I have a presentation on Amendment 3 to the Federal Fiscal Year 2024 UPWP, at the end of which I will ask that this board vote to waive the 21-day public comment period and endorse this amendment. Next slide, please. Amendment 3 was presented to the UPWP committee on August 8th, at which time committee members voted to send this amendment to this board for review and approval. This memo, updated from the memo originally sent to the committee in ways I will describe later in the presentation, as well as the redlined and clean versions of the 2024 UPWP, can be found on the meeting calendar for today's meeting for your reference during this conversation. This amendment consists primarily of adjustments to program budgets. This is our typical fourth quarter adjustment, which staff recommend after monitoring spending on the MPO's work programs through the first 3 quarters of. These adjustments are made based on a number of considerations, including staffing changes or evolving needs. For example, you might notice that the budget for the engagement program has increased to support the development and launching of the community planning lab, an initiative that was enabled by a delayed start to the MPO's Mission Zero planning. However, as always, a reduction in a line item's budget does not mean work will not be completed. It just means that less money is needed to finish out a program's planned work through the end of the fiscal year. Next slide, please. This amendment also notes the adjustment of planned work funded through re-obligated PL funds added in a previous UPWP amendment. Through February's Amendment 1, $140,000 of de-obligated federal funds, inclusive of the Mass.Local match, were incorporated into the UPWP for 5 actions. After that amendment, it was necessary to have an updated contract before those funds would be available for use, which requires a multi-agency administrative process. The notice to proceed, or the ability for us to begin spending those amended funds, was received late in June 2024, leaving less time than originally anticipated for the use of those funds. In addition, some challenges became evident for some of the spending strategies between the time that the amendment was approved back in February and the notice to proceed was received in June. That context motivated staff to work with our Mass.Dot liaison to update our strategy on how best to use a portion of those funds. So as we developed Amendment 3, we considered and recommended to the UPWP committee some modifications to the originally intended descriptions for the use of those de-obligated funds. Since that discussion with the committee, we have made a few updates to the adjustments described in the memo. One was a minor correction to the referenced prior amendment, and the other was to remove one of the 2 proposed adjustments due to the continued coordination with our Mass.Dot partners, through which we determined that one proposal was not in line with the guidelines for use of those funds. So with all that context, Amendment 3 now updates the description for one of the 5 original actions in order to maximize spending within the remaining available timeframe. Following low interest and an IT RFQ we issued, we are changing our strategy and focusing on hiring short-term and smaller-scale consultant expertise to advance IT and web-related initiatives. Next slide, please. Finally, this amendment programs funds awarded to the MPO through the Mobility, Access, and Transportation Insecurity, or MATI grant. As with previous discretionary grants awarded to the MPO or other agencies in the region, a UPWP must reflect planning grants before the Federal Transit Administration approves spending. This grant is managed by the University of Minnesota Center for Transportation and funded by the FTA. The MPO was awarded $150,000 to design a pilot to supplement the MBT's low-income fare program with access to low-cost community electric vehicle car sharing options for affordable housing residents in Revere, Chelsea, and Everett. This application was submitted in partnership with Good to Go, MAPC, MIT, Union Capital Boston, the neighborhood developers, and the cities of Revere, Chelsea, and Everett. Next slide, please. So with all that said, we are requesting that this board vote to waive the 21-day public comment period. For the board's reference, this is a practice that we have followed for the last several years, especially with regards to the fourth quarter adjustments we have presented in the past. While there are multiple line item adjustments and inclusion of planned projects, these adjustments have a net zero impact on the overall budget reflected in the UPWP. Additionally, there are less than 2 months left in the fiscal year, so waiving the comment period would allow staff the time they need to wrap up planned work before the end of the year. Next slide, please. So with that, I will request that this board vote to waive the 21-day public comment period and endorse this amendment as presented. So with that, I'll turn it back to the chair, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Srilekha. Any questions? Jay Monty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Srilekha, thank you very much. Everett is, I was a big supporter of this project, and this is, I think, well worth the waiving of the 21-day comment period to get this underway. I did have a question. I know we've been trying to work with Good to Go through our TMA that we formed here in Everett, and I believe they're actually going out of business very shortly. And I'm just curious if you guys were making alternate plans to
Yes.
accommodate for that.
Yeah, we're aware of that, and we are in discussion.
Okay.
And MAPC, we're a partner with CTPS on that, so we are. And Srileka, if you or any other CTPS staff want to say more about that, happy. Tegan.
I was just gonna say, if Ronak is still here, I think he's a good spokesperson for kind of the leadership around this grant. Ronak, are you still here? No, okay, sorry about that. Then yeah, but no, we like Eric said, we are working on that. We're happy to report back on sort of what direction we end up going in. Or Jay, if you just want to sort of chat about it.
Yeah, we can do it offline.
Because we're all thinking about it.
Yeah.
We're all thinking what to do.
Yeah, Allison Felix on my staff is actively working
Okay.
with Ronak on like what are alternatives. So we're definitely on top of it. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions about this? If not, can I get a motion to endorse the UPWP Amendment 3 as presented today with the waiver of the 21-day comment period? Jay Monty.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Jay. Aaron?
Second that motion.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Dave, can you call the roll, please?
Yes, Derek Cravat,
Derek Cravat, yes.
Lyris Leotard.
Davis Lyoto, yes.
Leoto, thank you. John Romano,
John Romano, yes.
Sandy Johnston,
Sandy Johnson, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Rick Barassa, yes.
Brian Kane,
Kane, yes.
Len Diggins,
With a broken heart about Good to Go, yes.
Patrick Hoey,
Patrick Hoey, yes.
Matt Moran,
Matt Moran, yes.
Jay Monty once again,
Jay Monty, yes.
Jen Martin,
Jen Martin, yes.
Aaron Shute,
Aaron Shute, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Benton, yes.
Kayla Sauer,
Hila Sauer, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Chibetti, yes.
Darlene Nguyen,
Darlene Nguyen, yes.
and Melissa Tintaklis.
Yes, Melissa Tintaklis, yes.
You, Chris Diorio,
Christiorio, yes.
Rachel Benson,
Rachel Benson, yes.
Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
That motion also carries. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Let's see, agenda item number 9 is an action item also, which is the Amendment 11 to the fiscal year 24 to 28 tip. And Ethan Lapointe.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. My name is Ethan Lapointe. I am the Transportation Improvement Program Manager with the Boston Region MPO. My first presentation here today is to cover Amendment 11 to the federal fiscal years 2024 to 28 tip, with this presentation culminating in a request to endorse this amendment. If we can move on to the next slide, this amendment included the proposed removal of an intersection improvement project in Milton, specifically at the intersection of Route 28 and Chickatobit Road, out of the federal fiscal year 2024 statewide highway program. This change was to accommodate a delay to federal fiscal year 2025 for the project. In the development of the federal fiscal years 2025 to 29 tip this past spring, this delay was already reflected there, which is why the project is being removed from this tip rather than being delayed here and also delayed in the next tip. If we can go on to the next slide, as an amendment, Amendment 11 incorporated a 21-day public comment period, which was held between July 18th and August 8th. During this period, staff did not receive any public comments related to this project. If we can move on to the next slide. Staff are requesting that the board votes to endorse Amendment 11 and this project change.
Okay, so that is pretty minor. any questions about this action? So not seeing any. Oh, Brian King.
Move approval.
Can I have a second? Tom Bent.
I second that motion, Mr. Chair.
Wait, we have a motion and a second. Dave, can you call the roll?
Yes, Derek Cravat,
Derek Cravat, yes.
Liris Leoto,
Days Luto, yes.
John Romano,
John Romano, yes.
Sandy Johnston,
Sandy Johnson, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Brian King,
Kane, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Patrick Hoey,
Patrick Hoey, yes.
Matt Moran,
Matt Moran, yes.
Jay Monty,
Hey, Monty, yes.
Jen Martin,
Jen Martin, yes.
Aaron Shute,
Aaron Shute, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Benton, yes.
Kayla Sauer,
Kilo Sauer, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Nguyen,
Darlene Nguyen, yes.
Melissa Tantakis,
Melissa Tintakis, yes.
Christy Ario,
Chris Diorio, yes.
Rachel Benson,
Rachel Benson, yes.
Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next agenda item is the action item for tip amendment 13. And back to Ethan.
Thank you. So with regard to this next presentation, this will cover Amendment 13 to the federal fiscal years 2024 to 28 tip, which is being introduced here today. At the end of this presentation, staff will be asking to vote to endorse this amendment, waiving its public comment period. Over these next few slides, I'll explain why that is, starting off on the next slide with a summary of the contents of this amendment. So Amendment 13 undertakes a variety of actions for different reasons. Amendment 13 first programs funding that is being reallocated through the federal fiscal year's 2024 August distribution process, which is a process conducted by the federal or through the Federal Highway Administration. I'll have more information on that on a future slide. Among these projects, there are two projects that support initiatives for the MBTA, including the electrification or working towards, I should say, the decarbonization of the Fairmount line, and also a system-wide flood mitigation project. There's also one new project for the statewide highway program in federal fiscal year 2024, which is a small, approximately $1 million bridge preservation contract in Boston's North End neighborhood over the Callahan Tunnel. Amendment 13 also includes a small cost adjustment for a Section 5307, which is an FTA funding program effort for a Metro West Regional Transit Authority project. In addition, as was mentioned earlier, there is also a project that is recommended for a delay out of federal fiscal year 24 into 2025 within the Regional Target Program. In order to ensure that the federal fiscal year 2024 funds that are unprogrammed resulting from this delay can be utilized, there will also be a request to reprogram some funding in two projects that are currently supported by MPO dollars in the form of the Jackson Square and the Columbus Avenue Phase 2 project. For all of these efforts, and I'll again explain this further over future slides, there's a need to request an endorsement here today as the Federal Transit Administration works to close their federal fiscal year 2024 books in mid-August. Similarly, the MassDOT Bridge project, the one in the North End, requires an endorsement today so that it may advertise within September 2024. If we can go on to the next slide. As already mentioned, it was a project delay within the Regional Target Highway program. This is one of two projects in Peabody for the Independence Greenway extension. This is the smaller of the two. It is requesting a delay due to major sewer work in the project area that was recently identified. And there's approximately, as I'll indicate later, about $8.3 million of funding here that will be unprogrammed when the project is delayed from federal fiscal year 24 to 2025. This funding will instead now be reallocated towards the Jackson Square Station Accessibility Project and the Columbus Avenue Bus Lanes Phase 2 project, with funding rebalanced out of federal fiscal year 2025 on those transit projects to accommodate the delay of this Independence Greenway project. I'll also note that for these changes, while we are requesting a waived comment period, in order to ensure that this funding can be obligated before FTA's books close. We will also request an amendment as part of the federal fiscal years 2025 to 29 tip when that takes effect to reflect these changes in federal fiscal year 2025 of that document. Now, moving on to the next slide to provide some explanation as to the other changes in this amendment, specifically August distribution. Each federal fiscal year, the Federal Highway Administration gives states the opportunities to request additional federal funds that may be above their annual formula amounts. The funding that is reallocated through, if we could go ahead one, thank you. The funding that is reallocated through, I'm sorry, can we move up 2 slides? I think we may have just lost the slide that we were on. And up another one, please. Thank you. The funding that is reallocated through Federal Highway's annual August distribution process is often redistributed from states that may not have obligated or programmed all of their federal formula funding or obligation authority by the end of their federal fiscal year. This money is then redistributed to projects in states that are eligible for federal aid programs and may require funding based on requests made by state departments of transportation, in this case, MassDOT. As part of the development of the statewide transportation improvement programs, there's some assumption baked into the programming of those efforts that incorporates some expectation of this funding being received. This amendment, Amendment 13, reflects requests for the Boston region only beyond what was currently included in that activity for federal fiscal year 2024. So again, these 3 August distribution projects that are listed are not the totality of all August distribution requests. Rather, they represent the requests that were made within the Boston region that are beyond what was already factored into the development of the federal fiscal years 24 to 28 STIP. So with that, moving on to the next slide to look at more detail at specific projects within these amendments, starting off with the changes to the federal fiscal year 2024 regional target program. The Independence Greenway extension in PBD is programmed in federal fiscal year 2024 for $8.27 million currently, and is requesting a delay to address critical utility improvement needs for sewer work within the project area. With regard to this, what the city of PBD has indicated, they are working to resolve this issue right now, specifically with regard to a trunk line that intersects with the proposed alignment for the Independence Greenway. The city also intends to return to the MPO in late September as far as their plan on how to address this sewer issue in a timely manner and ensure that this project can advance and advertise within federal fiscal year 2025. In order to ensure that this funding is utilized following its delay to that federal fiscal year, the funding that is utilizing congestion mitigation air quality dollars, namely CMAQ dollars, as a proportion of this project, about $3.52 million, will be flexed to the MBTA to support the Jackson Square Station Accessibility Project. The Transportation Alternatives Program funding that is currently utilized on the Independence Greenway extension, which is about $4.75 million, and is funding more intended for active transportation investments, will be flexed to FTA to be utilized by the MBTA on their Columbus Avenue bus lanes Phase 2 projects. These are not cost increases for these projects, as this funding will be offset by a reduction in federal fiscal year 2025 dollars in the federal fiscal year 25-29 tip. Moving on to the next slide to look at the statewide highway program. These are the 3 new projects for August distribution funding, being a bridge preservation project for Richmond Street over State Route 1A in the North End at about $1.06 million. The Fairmount Line infrastructure and decarbonization effort, which is using carbon reduction program funding in the amount of $18.75 million. About $15 million of that is the federal funding, $3.75 million would be the match. And in similar fashion, a flex to FTA for system-wide flood mitigation funding used to protect resiliency funding through the Federal Highway Administration, also flex to FTA. And lastly, for federal fiscal year 2024's transit program on the next slide, there is a cost adjustment for the acquisition of supporting and facilities equipment for the Metro West Regional Transit Authority. This is a funding shift that results in a net increase in the amount of funding being allocated to this effort. As part of Amendment 12 to the federal fiscal years 2024 to 28 tip, there was some funding that was freed up from a vehicle replacement project given recent budget estimates, and some of that new funding is being reallocated to this effort, along with rebalancing the proportions of federal aid and matching dollars here. This is an increase of about $275,000 on the project, going from $112,500 to $389,000. So with that, if we can move on to the next slide, each of these three sets of actions here, being the August distribution funding, the action to reallocate funding freed up from the delay of the Peabody Independence Greenway project, and this cost adjustment for the MWRTA efforts, requires an endorsement at present so that this funding can be obligated either before the project's advertised or before FTA's federal fiscal year 2024 books close. The public engagement plan for the MPO notes that the MPO board may vote to waive a public comment period, which cannot be conducted before these deadlines emerge, in emergency circumstances where there may be a requirement to take immediate action for either an extraordinary funding opportunity or emergency circumstances. In these cases, the MPO may waive that public comment period. So with that, on the next slide, MPO staff are requesting that the board votes to waive the comment period and endorse Amendment 13. I'm happy to field any questions.
So what I'd like to do first is, can we take questions on the projects first? And then I'd really like to have Ken Miller with Federal Highway Administration talk a little bit more about the August redistribution process, because I know based on Brian's comments, I'm sorry, based on Brad's earlier comments, I know there's some confusion about how that works. So and I have some questions about the projects too. So maybe we can take questions on projects, and then we can go to sort of the process. So any questions about the projects themselves? So one question I have, Ethan, so what we're doing with flexing some of the funding, we're actually doing projects that we had programmed in federal fiscal year 25. We're doing them in federal fiscal year 24. Is that correct?
So the two projects for the transit projects, the Columbus Avenue Bus Lanes Phase 2 project and the Jackson Square Station Accessibility Project were actually funded across 2 years at the outset. While their first start year was programmed in federal fiscal year 2024, there was additional funding already programmed in fiscal year 2025. This amendment is rebalancing funding between federal fiscal year 2025 to 2024, with the expectation that these projects will continue to advertise and their funding flex to the MBTA with federal fiscal year 2024. So these are not technically earlier start dates for those two MBTA projects. It's just more funding in the first year of funding now.
And does that then, I guess my question then is this other phase of the Independence Greenway, does that then free up money in fiscal 25 for that project? Or what are we gonna do with the Independence Greenway if we're not doing it now?
Yes, so in federal fiscal year 2025, come October 1st, Amendment 1 to the federal fiscal years 2025 to 29 TIP, when that takes effect, will once again reflect these changes with a full public comment period to reprogram the Independence Greenway project into that year, utilizing the funding that will be freed up in federal fiscal year 2025 by these shifts to the MBTA and City of Boston efforts.
Great, thank you. Matt Moran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to quickly speak in support of these projects. First off, on the Jackson Square and Columbus Ave projects, they're both projects of regional significance in the sense of having better job access. These are both gateways to the Longwood Medical Area, which is obviously a regional hub for medical jobs and education. And of course, with the Fairmount line, just wanted to speak in support of that. Sort of the long-standing decarbonization efforts that have been proposed through that initiative, providing access for Boston residents, Milton residents, and others to jobs in the regional core. So please, I would appreciate a sort of vote in support of these and us being able to sort of move these projects along at an expeditious rate. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Matt. Any other questions about the projects themselves? Great, not seeing any. Yeah, Ken, can you talk a little bit about the redistribution process?
Sure, thanks, Eric. Just a couple of clarifications. One, it's not solely funding that is other states cannot use. It's actually mostly funding that is available through our program offices. So it can be something like, hey, $5 billion was allocated for raised discretionary grants this year. We didn't sign, we didn't obligate the funding yet for, it takes time to get these grant agreements in place, that kind of thing. So actually, it's mostly money that comes from our program offices that manage discretionary projects and things like that. About this year, there was about $8.7 billion of it. So the amount that's been available has been going up for the past few years because of the discretionary grant programs. So like Ethan mentioned, for the past, I want to say 15 years or so, or even more, we've been baking in $50 million into the STIP, the statewide program, every year, based on the assumption that we'd get at least $50 million a year. And that wasn't a bad assumption, 5 years ago, because typically MassDOT, we get $60-70 million a year. That was about the range. And we didn't want to over assume how much we get, because then at the end of the year, if you didn't get it, you'd have to kick projects out. So we always thought it would be a little bit better to be conservative and say, hey, it was a safe bet to get at least $50 million a year. We've always encouraged MassDOT to ask for as much as you can, but there are limitations. The limitation, you can't ask for everything on, everything. There are limitations. Remember, this is extra obligational authority that can be used to go towards projects, but only up to the limit of the unobligated balances that every state has in different funding categories. Remember, funding gets allocated to the states, distributed to the states in these funding categories like National Highway, CMAQ. You've heard about it, but the targets are funding category neutral. So that allows MPOs to have flexibility, to program the projects that they think are best for their regions. But the state has to figure out how to make it all work within the funding categories across the state and make sure everything fits. Now, there is some, you can't transfer funding among funding categories, but there's a limit on that, and some things you can transfer and some things you can't. So MassDOT has to balance this all out among all the MPOs and the state projects at the end of the year to make sure everything fits under the funding categories. So this year, $50 million was baked into the STIP again. MassDOT have been programming, though. We had given them early indications that there was going to be more money available this year than in previous years. So they actually started programming up to about $100 million. So that's already baked into the STIP. Correct me if I'm wrong with anything, Derek. About $100 million was already baked into the STIP, assuming that we'd be getting more. However, the request from MassDOT was for $172 million. They felt, again, we encourage. It's in effect free money. It's obligational authority that these unobligated balance you're going to be able to use. It's not real money. It's like money sitting in an account that you can't touch unless you have the obligational authority to get it. So we encourage MassDOT to ask for the maximum. So but you don't know how much you're going to get, and so the request has to go in. I think the deadline was July 30th this year, but we won't know how much, all 50, I'm going to say 52 states. It's actually 50 states plus DC and, Guam and that kind of thing. But so all 52 states put in their requests, and it has to get balanced out. And then we don't know until August 30th how much the state is actually getting. So these TIP amendments are a little bit on spec, assuming you're going to get all $172 million. That's why these projects are in there. If we don't, then there may be projects that don't go. But it doesn't necessarily in the Boston region. It could be anywhere in the state. I mean, who knows? That's going to be something that we'll see what happens when we get the notice. The other interesting thing too, though, is we don't know until August 30th. So that's why it's hard to go through the normal public process because we just don't know until August 30th. The other interesting thing is that the deadline for transfers to FTA, guess what, is August 30th. So there are some timing issues making sure that everything gets done in time. In a perfect world, we know at the beginning of the year how much is each state would get, and we'd be able to incorporate it into the normal process, into the STIP and the TIPS and so forth. But that's just not the way it works. So I hope that was helpful, Eric. Is that
it is helpful? When does Federal Highway have a sense of how much redistribution will be available? Is it like in June? Like what is the sort of timing?
We tried to give people a sense of, a broad sense all the way back in January. We sort of said, hey, there's probably going to be a little bit more money this year than last year. Again, the past 3 years or so, it's gone up pretty dramatically because of the introduction of these discretionary grant programs and all the funding associated with them. And again, every state has to decide what's appropriate. And we encourage the states that we want to use up that 8.7 billion this year, something like that. It would be a very bad luck if we didn't allocate these funds and they didn't get used because, hey, how do you say Congress, hey, we need more money for
right,
when we didn't use the money that was available. So it's a bit of a scramble. In the past, when there was a lot less money available, we didn't have to encourage folks to, we always knew that it would be fully utilized. But we're getting such large amounts that we've been, there are some states, sometimes for political reasons, are not asking for the maximum amount. But we've been working with states, not Massachusetts, we didn't need to, encourage them, but other states have been encouraged to ask for as much as possible so that all the $8.7 billion was utilized. And that's our expectation.
And do you think that the 50 million that we're assuming is too low? Like, should we be assuming more than that?
Well, that's a good question because if we do get the $170 million this year, remember, we're drawing down on unobligated balances. And so right now, I think and Derek, you may have better numbers than I do, but I think the total unobligated balance is around $270 million. And remember, you add to the unobligated balance every year. So if you have a minute, I can explain that or not. It's up to you, Eric.
Honestly, if the members don't mind, I mean, I think the unobligated balance is also a little confusing.
Okay.
You could take a moment.
Oh, okay. So every year Congress apportions the funding. And so Massachusetts get in the funding categories, CMAQ, et cetera. So CMAQ is $60 million this year, and HSIP is this, and NHPP is that, and Protect, and all the different funding categories, planning, PL funding, SPR funding, so forth. And they say, guess what? Your total apportionment this year, if you add up all the funding categories, is $850 million. This is federal funding without the match, just to be clear. But by the way, we're only going to give you $780 million of obligational authority this year. You have to decide how you want to spend that $780 million. So by definition, there's $70 million of unobligated balances in whatever categories you decide, however the state and the MPOs decide to do it, that gets added to your unobligated balance every year.
And Ken, that the reason why that is done on annually is so Congress can kind of balance its fiscal budgets, right? Isn't that why it's not?
Yeah. It's a good question, Eric. I'm not exactly sure why. It's sort of like this general, it's this, funding, it's a mechanism to somehow make things fit.
Okay, I see.
But generally it's about 90%, and so when we do estimates for future steps, we say, hey, we look at what the percentages have been over the past 2 years. So it averages it out to say I'm making up a number, but about 90%. So guess what? For next year's step and the following step, assume a 90% obligation rate. But that means that every year there's $70 million that goes into your unobligated balances for the various funding categories. It could be, you could have, if you've decided to spend all your CMAQ money, use that obligation authority to spend down your CMAQ. You might have a zero unobligated balance in CMAQ, but you might have $100 million unobligated balance in NHPP or whatever. So every year you're adding to your unobligated balance, and the funding gets distributed among the states, provided every state asks for some maximum amount based on each state's percentage of unobligated balance compared to the total unobligated balance around the country. So for example, if we get the $172 million a year that was asked for, and we have a $250 million unobligated balance, that we'll be using up 170 of it, only leaving $80 million of unobligated balance. Say we add next year, it's a 90% obligation rate. We'll maybe add $70 million of unobligated balance next year. We'll only have an $150 million unobligated balance next year, as opposed to the $250 we had this year. And since the amount that each state gets is based on your percentage of unobligated balance over, based on around the country, you might have a smaller percentage next year compared of the whole pie. So it's hard to predict exactly how much, what to bake into the STIP every year.
That is good context. I know it is complicated. I'm sure many of the members don't have. Yeah, but
there'll be a quiz on this right after this.
If anyone, if folks want to just, this could be honestly, this could be a great topic of discussion at maybe like the Tipper committee, just to get more, clarity on this. But Ken, thank you. Really appreciate this. Brian Kane, I see your hand raised.
Thanks, Eric. And thank you, Ken, for the deep dive. It is very helpful. I fully support the projects that are suggested here. I guess I don't support the process in the way that we kind of got here. So I would love to have seen this go to the Tipper committee in advance for their consideration. I'm sure, given the importance of it, they could have had an emergency meeting or something. And I just really think this should have gone through a lot more consideration rather than be brought to the MPO with kind of a last minute, we have to do this or else we lose the money. I mean, it just feels wrong. And it just feels like MassDOT is kind of once again putting us in this position of having to say yes to great projects that we want to fund without really any consideration of what the alternatives might have been. It's entirely possible that there were municipal projects that could have benefited greatly from these funds. And again, everyone here knows how strongly I feel about funding the T&T project. So I'm not saying that what is being funded isn't important. I just think that, again, we're being kind of just forced to do something. We've tried to put processes and procedures in place to not be at this position. And I just think our processes are being ignored. And, I'm going to support this. Obviously, we have to support this. There's no real option not to. But I just wanted to express to my fellow board members my concerns about the way this has been done. And I just think there's better ways to do it. Thank you, Eric.
Thanks, Brian. Rachel Benson.
Oh, let me see. Here we go. Sorry, I was trying to bring up, I had questions on the previous projects, seeing as the swap area has several greenway projects. So there were several greenway projects on this last tip that we just approved. I was wondering if maybe the Greenway project, Peabody, and maybe this isn't the forum for it, could sort of give us like I guess an after action report. It seems that they've gone through, they've been working on this for a while. I was just wondering how this sewer improvement wasn't caught in the design, and if they weren't ready, should they have been moved to a further tip. And again, I'm also just getting agita thinking about what we just went through with the last tip, moving stuff around and funding and stuff. So anything we can do to sort of help that, is similar to Brian's comment as well. Thank you.
Yeah, and Rachel, I know there is a strong desire by staff to have more information about the project readiness status earlier, and there is a process underway to have sort of more information from MassDOT and from the project proponents. So I don't know, Ethan, if you want to speak to anything like that, but if not, that's fine. But definitely, you hear what you're saying, and we want to be able to, as early as we can, get updates on these projects so we know, what's happening with them.
Yeah, and again, just because we had so many other Greenway projects, it might be helpful for those Greenway projects to sort of, hey, let us know some pitfalls that we might encounter so we can better, prepare for that for this board as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. Tom Bent.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I agree with just about everything that Brian just said. We will be voting in favor of this, but again, that frustration level that this happens. So what I was going to propose that if we could have a future agenda item where MassDOT can come before us to explain what their decision-making process is when they ask for this additional funding, that when it comes available, and how they are making decisions as to what projects that they want to have funded, and how the MPO can actually work with them in helping them, make those decisions. And again, this happens year after year after year, and we bring up our frustrations, and I agree with Brian. It just feels like MassDOT's not listening to us on this, and God forbid if the MPO got a little upset and said, no, we're not voting on this today, what would happen, right? So, none of us want to be in that position, because all these are excellent projects. There's no doubt about that. But it's again, the process. So I would like to see if you could put forward a future agenda item where MassDOT can address some of these concerns and work with us as partners that we're supposed to be, to help them make these decisions.
I will bring that to the agenda setting meeting. Thank you, Tom. Derek.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to acknowledge as well, and of course, happy to coordinate with folks on bringing this back with a little more detail, but just to provide a little more context to what Ken said, to build on it and maybe explain how it worked this year. The process is that we have available obligation authority, right? It's not new apportionment, it's not new funding. And most of the time, the available funding we do have is not in the normal categories, like the ones Ken mentioned, like CMAQ, HSIP, SDBG, the ones that are often used to fund municipal projects. It's in very specific sources that typically we struggle to obligate, because there aren't many projects that meet the requirements for these programs, right? So the funding sources that are being used this year are the Protect funding, carbon reduction program funding, and the off-system bridge funding for the Boston project. So not only do we have to work within available apportionment balances for each of those programs, but the projects actually have to be ready to advertise in the current fiscal year, or the transfers to be made in the current fiscal year. So the universe of projects that we're working with at this point is exceedingly small. There are not many projects that meet the requirements that are sort of in place for the redistribution process. And so and the other piece of the puzzle is that, in addition to what Ken said about the amount available, we all see cost increases happen, right? We're all dealing with the struggle of cost increases throughout the fiscal year occurring. And so part of in addition to the amount that is available through redistribution, a lot of the redistribution that we request actually has to go toward accommodating cost increases on whatever projects experience them, whether those are municipal projects, MassDOT projects, et cetera, that we all vote on throughout the year. So the increased obligation authority partly goes toward accommodating project cost increases throughout the year. And unfortunately, because of how late in the federal fiscal year this happens, we don't know how much is going to be needed to accommodate cost increases until, right, so it is that shortened time frame. in that sense too. And I just want to say as well that this is not just a Massachusetts issue. This is a national concern. I actually heard the president of AASHTO speaking at a recent funding task force meeting saying that AASHTO plans to advocate for a revised process for this. It's something that every state DOT and every state struggles with. And so I just wanted to provide that context as well and say that, you know, when we get the redistribution amount, when we know how much is available, we're required to work very quickly with a very small set of projects that meet the requirements, that meet the, you know, criteria for a redistribution request. And so it's certainly not meant to be intentionally, you know, exclusionary in that sense. It's just trying to meet the parameters of what we're being asked to do. And so we definitely acknowledge it though, and we want to, you know, talk more about it at future meetings. I just wanted to provide a little more context to that from the MassDOT perspective. So appreciate that, and we'll talk further. Yep, thank you.
And I think that that is really good, important context, that we're looking at, you know, funding that has a lot of strings attached to it on what it can be spent on, you know, projects that, you know, have to be ready. And I know there's a lot of moving parts here, and definitely, I think I just want to appreciate the hard work that the staff in the Office of Transportation Planning do to make sure that we're able to take advantage of this funding. So I hope you don't feel like this criticism is, you know, a slight against the great work that you all are doing. I think having some conversation about just, you know, more understanding this process and identifying opportunities for, you know, the MPO to have input as early as possible, I think would be great. And so, yeah, let's have a conversation about, you know, how we can, you know, have a future discussion about this. But definitely want to say appreciate the great work that you and your staff are doing to, you know, to take advantage of this funding.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. And yeah, certainly, you know, no, don't take anything personally. And I just want to say, yeah, we appreciate the input too, because it's helpful for us to understand, of course, you know, what it feels like to folks, and like, you know, making sure we are working together. So that's always helpful, and want to just, yeah, say never hesitate, obviously, to bring those concerns and voice them. So appreciate that, and thank you.
Josh Ostroff.
Thank you so much. I just want to say that from Josh Ostroff, MBTA Capital Program Planning, and you know, we've been asked to just provide some information about the projects, although I don't know that that's necessary, and appreciate the comments of support, particularly for Fairmount. Just following up on what Derek said. So these are projects that have already been through the CIP process, and we're really just talking about a change in the funding source, which in theory then would provide other funding that we can shift around. That is a constant issue with the capital investment plan. We're always being asked to address changes of scope, costs, and so forth over the course of the year. All that said, I hear some of the concerns, and we will absolutely work with our MassDOT partners, MPO, and just to help make the process more understandable. So sometimes in public office, you know, we are forced to make decisions with less time than we would like, or less information. But if we at least lay the groundwork ahead of time, so you understand how we might consider what projects are appropriate and how MassDOT does, then I think that the short turnaround for a decision might be more agreeable to folks on the MPO. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Josh. John Romano.
Thanks, Eric. I just want to say thank you to all the states that didn't spend their money so that we have this problem. That's all.
Well, as Ken said, it's not necessarily just that they didn't spend it, but that a lot of these federal grants take a long time with contracting, and people aren't, you know, getting the projects going as fast as they want there to. But definitely hear what you're saying, and we'll take those resources.
We'll take it.
We'll take it. Any other discussion on this? We still actually have to take a motion to approve this, and I did sense strong support for this. So maybe we could get a motion to approve in a second. John Romano?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Len Diggins?
Diggins seconds.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Dave, can you call The roll, please.
Yes, I will. Derek Cravat,
Derek Cravat, yes.
Lyris Lioto,
Liris Lyoto, yes.
John Romano,
John Romano, yes.
Sandy Johnston,
Sandy Johnson, yes, and with appreciation to FHWA, MassDOT, and MPO staff and everybody who has helped make this happen.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Brian Kane,
Kane abstain.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Patrick Hoey,
Patrick Hoey, yes.
Matt Moran,
Matt Moran, yes, and thank you everyone for your time on this.
Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
Jen Martin,
Jen Martin, yes.
Aaron Shute,
Aaron Shute, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Benton, yes.
Kayla Sauer,
Kayla Sauer, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Nguyen,
Darlene Wynn, yes.
Melissa Tintopoulos,
Melissa Tintopoulos, yes.
Chris Diorio,
Diorio, yes.
Rachel Benson,
Rachel Benson, yes.
and Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's go on to the next agenda item, which is the MOU update. Let's see, is that Aaron? Or no,
This
that's
is Dave Hong. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am Dave Hong, staff to the MPO and the manager of MPO activities. As we move to the next slide, I want to thank everyone who has had eyes on for your review and suggestions on the MOU document. We've received questions and comments from Massport and the MBTA during this review cycle. We have a red line and a clean version of the MOU document posted on the MPO calendar that you can refer to. As we move to the next slide, a few changes that have been made to the MOU between the draft of the August 1st MPO meeting and today's meeting. They were valuable edits to ensure accuracy, factual accuracy, but not extensive in their nature. These updates include updating the MBTA's whereas statement to reflect its responsibility to produce a capital investment plan. Next, updating the name of Massport's Flynn Cruiseport, Boston, relocating information on MPO meeting location requirements to the operations plan document, and revising language referencing the MBTA's program for mass transportation, also known as the PMT. Next, please. At the last MPO meeting on August the 1st, I provided an overview of work to date in white, blue, and yellow. And today we will propose to release the document for public comment. These next 3 steps to follow will be taking in and replying to public comments, collecting member signatures, and putting the updated MOU into effect before, or rather at the annual meeting in November. Moving on to the next slide, please. MPO staff then request the board votes to release the draft MOU for a 21-day public comment period, and that public comment period would commence Friday, August the 16th, and conclude Friday, September the 6th. So with that, we welcome questions, and I yield back to the chair. Thank you.
okay. Any questions for Dave? Okay, not seeing any. Dave, you're looking for a motion, right, to approve and send this out for a 21-day public comment period. Can I
That is
get
correct.
Can I get that motion in a second, Tom Bent?
Mr. Chair, thank you. I'd like to make that motion that we put this out, vote to approve and put this up for public comment.
Thank you, Tom. And I just want to say thank you for all your hard work chairing this committee. Really appreciate that.
And I was gonna wait until the vote's over, but hopefully it'll go through. I was just going to thank all the committee members for all their hard work on this. And all the staff, David, Erin, I'm not gonna name everyone because I know I'll miss somebody, but everybody put a great effort in on this, and I want to thank everybody involved. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Len Diggins.
I was going to echo Eric's comment as I second this motion.
Great. We have a motion and a second. Dave, can you call the roll?
Absolutely. Derek Cravat.
Derek Cravat, yes.
Lyris Lioto.
Lyris Lioto, yes.
John Romano.
John Romano, yes.
Sandy Johnston.
Sandy Johnston, yes, and thanks to Dave and other MPO staff members for facilitating a really great process on this.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, everyone. Sarah Lee.
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Barassa.
Yes.
Brian Kane.
Kane, yes, and Sandy, I appreciate your comments during votes.
Diggins.
Diggins, yes.
Patrick Hoey.
Patrick Hoey, yes.
Matt Moran.
Matt Moran, yes.
Jay Monty.
Jay Monty, yes.
Jen Martin.
Jen Martin, yes.
Thank you. Aaron Shute.
Aaron Shute, yes.
Tom Bent.
Bent, yes.
Ayla Sauer.
Ayla Sauer, yes.
Dennis Giambetti.
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Nguyen.
Darlene Nguyen, yes.
Melissa Tentakoulis.
Melissa Tentakoulis, yes.
Christy Orio.
Christy Orio, yes.
Rachel Benson.
Rachel Benson, yes.
And Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
This motion carries, and thank you.
Great, thank you. Let's move on to number 12, which is the Route 37 Priority Corridor Study. Seth Asante.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning. I am Seth Asante, MPO staff in the Multimodal Planning and Design team. This study was conducted as part of the MPO's Multimodal Mobility Infrastructure Program. It assessed existing conditions, identified corridor needs, and developed improvements to increase safety and multimodal options. In this presentation, I'll provide a brief background about the study and describe the existing conditions and proposed improvements, and conclude with the next steps. Next slide, please. Over the years, MPO staff have conducted several corridor studies with valuable input and support of our stakeholders. Communities that have received corridor studies are shown in orange. And stakeholders like this study because they provide them at the conceptual level what will be required to address the deficiencies in the corridors before committing to design and engineering. Some of the study's recommendations have been implemented or advanced into projects on Mass.Project Information Database and also on the Transportation Improvement Program. Next slide, please. The Multimodal Mobility Infrastructure Program goals are to address gaps in regional and community multimodal needs towards a safe and accessible regional transportation. Hence, the corridor studies explore strategies to address safety and enhance multimodal options, as well as build consensus among stakeholders in planning multimodal transportation. Next slide, please. The approach to the corridor studies begins with establishing a universe of corridors. Each year, MPO staff contacts the sub-regions, municipalities, and other stakeholders to identify corridors and other areas of interest. MPO staff reviews the long-range transportation plan needs assessment and refers to other tools such as the mass.impact portal and the congestion management process to identify additional locations. We screen the locations using established criteria like the TIP scoring criteria, and the final study location is made in coordination with selected stakeholders. MPO staff also collaborate with stakeholders to assess the existing conditions and develop improvements. Next slide, please. These are the takeaway from the study. Safety was a primary concern, which reflected in the existing conditions and the community engagement process. MPO staff proposed several strategies to increase safety for all users. Multimodal options are limited in the Route 37 corridor due to poor infrastructure conditions and a lack of infrastructure to expand multimodal options. Staff propose improvements to expand multimodal options. The engagement efforts through community survey, stakeholder meetings, provided greater understanding of the community needs and the needs for Route 37 and how to resolve them. And finally, the proposed improvements, if implemented, will enhance livability and support the existing and future land uses. Next slide, please. For the next few slides, I will describe the existing conditions. Next slide, please. The study corridor is the entire Route 37 in Braintree, highlighted in yellow, which is about 5.2 miles long. Route 37 in Braintree is a principal arteria on the National Highway System, and it's generally a two-lane, two-way roadway. It passes through several zoning districts and it's the main roadway connecting people to schools, work, shopping centers, recreational areas, transit station, and neighboring communities. There are also transportation equity populations in the corridor, including youth, the elderly, and people with disability. Next slide, please. Contexts vary within the Route 37 corridor as the land use differs with varying densities and mixes, and the operational characteristics such as speed regulation, right-of-way width, and infrastructure also varies along the corridor. By considering these factors, Route 37 was segmented into 3 distinct contexts. The Granite Street segment, which is playing now, is a 4-lane, two-way roadway, and it provides access to the South Shore Plaza, Office and Industrial Park, and the and Logan Express Braintree lots. The average daily traffic volume in this segment is about 30,000 vehicles per day. Please stop this video and let's go on to the next one. Okay. Thank you. The next segment is the Franklin Street segment, which is in the middle of the corridor. The Franklin Street segment is a 2-lane, two-way roadway, and the front setback of the properties abutting the roadway are much closer. The average daily traffic in this segment is about 18,000 vehicles per day. Next slide, please. The last segment is the Hancock Street and Washington Street segment, which is also a two-lane roadway. And this segment has usable shoulders on either side of the street. The daily traffic volume in this segment is about 25,000 vehicles per day. Next slide, please. The MBTA Braintree station is within half a mile of Route 37 and is one of the terminals on the Red Line branches and also a stop on the Lakeville, Middleborough, and Kingston commuter rail lines. The MBTA also has 3 bus routes on Route 37, and together, all 3 routes cover almost 95% of the corridor. Massport's Logan Express Braintree lot is also located on Forbes Road off of Route 37 and provide a convenient way to the airport. Next slide, please. There are sidewalks on both sides of Route 37, about 90% of the corridor. However, there are gaps in the sidewalk network that causes people to switch sides to get to their destination. And there was a pedestrian fatality in one of those gaps. All 3 corridor segments also have sections with poor sidewalk conditions and non-compliant ADA curb ramps. Pedestrian activities is moderate throughout the corridor, and there are 2 high activity areas, the Roosevelt Street and Leroy Way intersection. The Roosevelt Street intersection had 217 crossings during the peak period, and it provides access to a housing development for the elderly and people with disabilities. The other location is the Leroy Way intersection with 129 crossings. This intersection connects to the Braintree High School, and many students walk through it to the high school. Next slide, please. The corridor currently has limited bike accommodation, and there is lack of awareness for people biking, which requires attention. The green roadways have bike facilities, and the blue roadways have bike accommodation proposals that, if implemented, will connect to Route 37. And this emphasizes the need for bike accommodation on Route 37 to improve connectivity and accessibility. Next slide, please. MPO staff analyze safety in the corridor from 2 perspectives. One that look at locations with excess expected injury and fatal crashes, which is shown on the left-hand side, and one that looked at high crash location, which is shown on the right-hand side. Both methodologies indicated 5 locations that should be prioritized for safety and operational improvements. Next slide, please. We heard from the community of users about their perception of travel conditions on Route 37 and ideas for improvements. The survey, which was posted on the town's website, had over 300 respondents. And most of the respondents travel on Route 37 almost daily and typically drive, emphasizing the automobile-centric nature of the corridor. The majority of the trips almost 90% are work and shop related trips. And the top destination for users of Route 37 in Braintree are the South Shore Plaza, Five Corners, the Braintree High School, and the Braintree Station. The primary concerns or challenges of respondents were safety, congestion, and poor infrastructure conditions. There were also stakeholder meetings involving staff from the town of Braintree, MassDOT, the MBTA, South Shore Chamber of Commerce, Braintree School District, and MPO staff presented the existing conditions and also the improvements for feedback. Next slide, please. For the next few slides, I will describe the proposals for Route 37. Next slide, please. These are the strategies that we use for addressing the corridor needs. Improving safety through infrastructure treatments, increasing the quantity and quality of walking and biking modes, improving bus service reliability and operations, and also increasing driver awareness and compliance for people walking, biking, and traffic control devices. Next slide, please. In the Granite Street segment, the proposal includes new sidewalk, which will close the gaps and provide continuous sidewalks. This new sidewalk are shown in the blue color. The gap under the I-93 bridge overpass is due to space limitation under the bridge. Additional improvement also include reconstructing sidewalks in poor conditions and installing leading pedestrian intervals for the concurrent pedestrian faces to increase safety. Additional proposals include signal upgrades and timing updates. And staff also recommend a road safety audit for this segment as it contains 2 HZIP location, high crash locations. Next slide, please. As a long-term proposal for the Granite Street segment, MPO staff recommend evaluating and modernizing Granite Street to accommodate people who bike as the future needs and land uses within this segment continue to change. As a long-term proposal, we also propose incorporating bus priority signal technology into the signal system to improve bus service reliability and operations. Next slide, please. Space in the Franklin Street segment is limited, as I showed you in the video. And the proposals for Franklin Street segment include reconstructing sidewalks in poor conditions and making the curb ramps ADA compliant, installing bicycle signs and bike pavement markings to increase awareness for people biking. Also enhancing crosswalk visibility by adding rectangular rapid flashing beacons at the uncontrolled marked crosswalks. Additional improvements include installing speed limit signs and speed feedback signs. Next slide, please. The proposals for the Hancock and Washington Street are similar to those for the Granite Street segment, and they include new sidewalk to close gaps, as well as reconstructing sidewalks in poor conditions. MPO staff also recommend a new traffic signal at the Peach Street intersection to increase safety and reduce congestion. Next slide, please. The long-term proposal for the Hancock and Washington Street segment is repurposing the usable shoulders into bike lanes with bus turnout spaces and adding bus priority signal technology into the signal system. Narrowing the travel lanes using shoulder spaces to accommodate bike lanes, installing speed limit signs and speed feedback signs, and the traffic control devices will help manage speeds within the corridor. Next slide, please. The proposals for the Route 37 in Braintree, if implemented, will increase safety for all users and expand multimodal options. They will also enhance livability and support existing and future land uses. Stakeholders must work with MassDOT and the MPO to prioritize improvements and advance steady recommendations into projects. MassDOT has jurisdiction over Route 37 in Braintree and is working on projects within the corridor. This study will be useful for those projects and also for initiating new projects to address the corridor needs. Thank you. And I'll hand over to the chair.
Did we lose Eric?
No, I'm here. Any questions for Seth? Len?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A compliment, a request, and a question. So once again, Seth, made a really good job on the study. You seem to have outdone yourself with the graphics this time. I mean, we're in this nice situations where I think your reports are getting easier to digest, but you're not dumbing them down at all. I mean, like I said, the graphics and the tables really have a lot of information in them. So thank you for that. My request, of course, is that you come to an advisory council meeting, so that we can review this some more. I mean, as you know, the advisory council is interested in all studies done by the staff. So I mean, I'm sure they really appreciate having a chance to ask a lot more questions. I know I would. And a final quick question. You may not know the answer to it. Do you have a sense of how much the study costs to do?
Usually in the past, I think it's average around 150,000.
Okay, good enough. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, Ken.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to echo what Len said. Great job, Seth. I really appreciate you doing these studies. Just two things. One, just so folks know, there is an Everyday Counts initiative that we are working with MassDOT regarding lighting for pedestrian crossings and things like that. It turns, most crashes with involving pedestrians happen at night, and highway lighting at crosswalks can be very helpful. So I hope that's I imagine it's already part of your recommendation, Seth, but just wanted to make sure that would be included. The second thing is I was very interested in your map earlier in the presentation about all the locations where the MPO has done studies previously. And I was just wondering if it would make sense, or maybe you've already done this, if you could take a look back at all the studies that have been done over the years and determine if everything has been implemented or not, and then maybe take a look and see if there are some recommendations that are still outstanding, and then maybe some effort could be put into seeing if one, if they're still valid, but also I'm presuming they are, then moving them forward to see what would need to get done to move some of these projects towards implementation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Any other questions for Seth? Okay, Seth, thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation.
Thank you.
So we will move to agenda item 13, the performance dashboard. Before we do that, though, I unfortunately have to step away from the meeting at 12 noon, and I will be handing over the chair to Derek Cravat. So appreciate chairing the meeting today, and if I have to step away early, just want to thank everyone for a great meeting. So Sam Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe we have some slides to show. Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Sam Taylor. I am the Program Manager of Performance-Based Planning and Programming. And today I am happy to be previewing for you the new performance dashboard, which was recently completed in collaboration with our data management group here at the MPO. And in particular, I would like to thank Seth Strumwasser and Ben Krepp, who contributed significantly to this effort. Next slide, please. So we will begin with a quick refresher on performance-based planning and programming. I will then briefly describe the dashboard construction process. Then for the primary focus of this presentation, I'll provide a glimpse into different features of the dashboard. And then we will also discuss certain dashboard elements and future considerations and potential directions this application could take. Next slide, please. So as required by US DOT and as demonstrated in Destination 2050, the MPO's long-range transportation plan, the performance-based planning and programming process includes 3 phases: planning, investing, and monitoring and evaluating. So US DOT requires MPOs to establish measurable performance targets in 6 key performance areas. And MPOs are required to report on progress towards achieving those targets. So this dashboard is meant to be a new tool for such reporting. Next slide, please. So of the 6 performance areas on which the MPO sets performance targets, 3 of them, roadway safety, transit safety, and transit asset condition, are revisited annually. So many of you all were probably here for those presentations back in February and March. And the other 3, bridge and pavement condition, travel time reliability, and congestion management and air quality, are revisited every 2 to 4 years, depending on the measure. Under each of these performance areas are a handful of metrics that help us measure progress on transportation performance in the region. And as you will see in a minute, the dashboard is organized by these 6 performance areas, with there being a page for each one. So next slide, please. So this is a slide on the dashboard construction process. So the process began with forming a vision on what the new dashboard could look like. This vision was partially informed by FHWA's suggestions about displaying performance-based planning related items in one central location, which was during the MPO's last federal certification review. The MPO staff also held a couple of sessions with the advisory council back in the fall to gain feedback about potential dashboard features. After deciding on which content and basic features to include in the dashboard, we worked to collect and obtain all the performance data related to our official performance target measures. And I must also give thanks and credit to MBTA and also OPMI, or the Office of Performance Management and Innovation, on their coordination with helping to locate certain historical performance data items during this process. And then the next step, so given the nature of the performance data and application tools available, the data management team and the manager of performance-based planning and programming elected to build the dashboard using Shiny Apps, which is a package in the application called R. Next slide, please. So now we have reached the final stage, which is MPO staff have published the dashboard, and in the future we'll be maintaining the dashboard, which contains all the performance targets that this board has adopted over the past handful of years in accordance with US DOT regulations, as well as actual performance to track progress against those targets. Next slide, please. So finally, here's the landing page for the new performance dashboard. You will see that there are 6 buttons in the center of the screen with relevant icons, and those are for each of the 6 aforementioned pages for the 6 transportation performance areas. On each of those pages are a handful of relevant measures and their corresponding performance targets. Also, there are corresponding buttons at the top of the screen which stay present on the screen no matter which page you visit. So if you want to move from, say, the roadway safety page to the travel time reliability page, you will not need to return to the home screen to do so. You can just click on the buttons that are up there near the top of the screen. So next slide, please. So for those of you who have not yet accessed or clicked through the new application, here is one example of the dashboard's appearance. You would reach this page by finding the dashboard on the MPO website and then selecting one of the large buttons that indicate the 6 performance areas or from the top of the screen. So this is a screenshot taken from the roadway safety page of the dashboard. You'll notice that there are several tabs on the left side of the screen for various measures related to performance-based planning. This is a fairly simple plot chart that displays the rolling 5-year averages for serious injuries on roadways, both statewide and in the region. The gold diamond points show the performance targets that the MPO has adopted over the last several years. These also coincide with the state's targets on serious injuries, for those familiar with this process. And of course, the green and blue dots display actual performance at the state level and at the region level, respectively. So the green dots are the state performance and the blue dots show regional performance. One more note while on this slide, while not depicted in the really a screenshot, when one hovers their mouse over any of the lines in the plot, that year's performance data will appear in a small window. And so that comes up kind of like a pop-up. Next slide, please. So this example in the screenshot shows the exact same data on serious injuries as in the previous slide, but in table form. So every metric that has a plot also has an accompanying table, which can be reached by clicking on the table button near the top of the screen. It's in blue. The plot button is here in white right next to it. So in some cases, such as with this data set, you may need to scroll over horizontally to see all the columns in the tables, depending on the measure, but that'll be pretty obvious when you see a scroll bar at the bottom of the screen, depending on the measure. Next slide, please. So here's a second example of a view into the dashboard. Transit safety is a performance area in which many performance measures have a great degree of variance in their data. So because of this, we elected to use horizontal bars to display data rather than plot points on a chart, just for scale reasons. So on the transit safety page, there are 3 tabs on the left side of the screen, one for each transit agency. And then after the user clicks on their desired transit agency, a drop-down menu, which on this screen is shown under Choose Metric, will appear, giving the user 7 metrics to select from. So the example shown displays MBTA's system reliability measure, which is a measure of how many miles each mode of transit on average travels between mechanical failures. So as you can see, light rail, which is that third column out of 4, tends to go about 7,000 to 8,000 miles between failures, while paratransit tends to be able to go about 30,000 to 40,000 miles in between failures. So again, for these reasons, these targets and actual performance are showing the horizontal blue and gold bars, just so that we didn't have a plot chart that is very, very stretched out and disproportionate. Next slide, please. So a few main takeaways about the new dashboard. This application can be easily updated on a regular basis, especially as new targets and data on actual performance become available. The previous dashboard that some may remember showed some great in-depth data on regional performance. However, unfortunately, it's pretty burdensome to update and difficult to add new performance areas and measures to it. All performance targets currently shown are those required to be reported on. These are the same performance targets that our board members adopt on 1, 2, and 4-year cycles. And the data is organized by a federal performance area, aligning with how we set targets in performance-based planning and programming. Also, this particular application allows the MPO to add additional performance information to help bolster users' understanding of regional progress. So, for example, while performance targets on roadway fatalities and serious injuries are set using rolling 5-year averages, the dashboard also contains some actual performance data on 1-year performance for each measure, which helps give users more context about regional performance on safety. And just one final thing I wanted to point out is that the data on the dashboard is actually downloadable. So should that be of interest to anyone here or any other stakeholders who visit the site.
Great.
So to conclude, we expect this dashboard to be used for the coming years. We welcome your feedback on helping the application evolve. So if you have questions, suggestions, or thoughts about the content or appearance of the dashboard, please contact me, Sam Taylor, at staylor@ctps.org. You can also reach me by phone at 857-702-3702. And then also, on this final slide here is the link to the dashboard, which I will put in the chat in a minute, just after we move past this particular slide. So thank you all for your attention today. I'd like to open up the floor for questions or thoughts for a few minutes, if that is permitted, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Sam. Great presentation. It looks like Lauren put the link in the chat, so that's all set.
Thank
you. Can navigate to that. Are there any questions? Len, did you have a question?
Yeah, I wanted to first off, I was checking out Sam. It looks good, nice and clean, and you're right. There is less data on it than was on the previous dashboard, but hopefully it's just really a matter of bandwidth where we'll be able to add more data to it. When I think one of the early introductory slides was like future things that we could add. I would say anything that has to do with our metrics, that are the criteria that we use to select projects would be good, and a general request is, might it be possible to show how the MPO is either overperforming or underperforming or just matching the performance of the state? For instance, I'm looking at the serious injuries charge for roadway safety. Actually, maybe a better one would be fatality rate. It might be helpful to see how we are doing in the region, because you kind of break out the region. I understand that we use the state targets, and it'd be interesting to see if we could maybe extrapolate from the state targets to what would possibly be MPO regional targets. I know we don't officially set those when we do the targets, but it might be helpful to get a sense of how we as a region are doing, not simply for the sake of comparison, but also to get a sense of what it is that we could do better, especially if we are underperforming the state. But overall, very good, and I think we'll ask if you're willing to come to the advisory council again. We weren't very helpful when it came to developing the dashboard. We wanted a whole lot of different things that really weren't being in your bailiwick for this, but I think my colleagues will really appreciate what you've done and probably have some insightful questions. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Len. Just to respond to that particular set of feedback. So if you look at the fatality rate, that pretty much will show you what you're looking for in a slightly different way. So you'll be able to see the different rates at which fatalities and serious injuries occur in the state versus just on Boston region roadways. But in general, yes, thank you for that suggestion.
That's it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Len. Other questions? All right. Don't see any. So great job, Sam. Appreciate the update there and looking forward to seeing future updates when you have new data in. So thank you. That will move on to the next item, which is just members items. Are there any members items to come before the MPO today? Seeing none, I know that at the beginning, Tegan mentioned potentially canceling the September 5th MPO meeting. So just want to note that so folks are aware. Just be on the lookout for potential cancellation, which means I think the next meeting would be the third Thursday of September, which would be September 19th, I believe. So just be on the lookout for that. But with that, I will ask for a motion and second to adjourn. Tom Bent. I think you're muted, Tom. Oh.
Sorry about that. Great meeting and a motion to adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Leonard?
Without further comment, I was second.
All right.
Thanks,
With that,
thanks, Len.
All right. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your summer. See you
All right.
soon.